Hey, what's up? I kind of wanted to make a bit of a video about Jesus or Christianity and non-duality, and where I see some crossover there between Jesus' teachings and non-duality. And I used to be a Christian. That's how I was raised. So that's where I, picked up at least some knowledge of, going through reading a lot of the Bible, and certainly the Gospels, which are the accounts, written stories of Jesus' life. And certainly the rest of the New Testament as well. But it has been a few years since my being a bona fide Christian. So this will probably be off the top of my head. So I might not get verbatim everything right, and this is just my own interpretation as well. Well, the first thing that really comes to mind is Jesus' claim to divinity. And if we go into Hinduism and this kind of thing, or even Buddhism, where we might compare the void, so to speak, with the equivalent of God in Buddhism. So Jesus claimed to be God. And in particular, there is an emphasis there in using the phrase "I am" in many different in the Gospels, I suppose, in Mark, Matthew, and Luke, I believe, Jesus makes these big "I am" statements, and the significance of that is it was a subtle claim to divinity, which is the classic, that's the classic Christian interpretation here as well. So I'm not so far it's not controversial. But if we look at where does this come from, then we go back to Exodus, where God reveals himself to Moses in that story in a burning bush, and he reveals I think Moses says something on the lines of, "What should I call you?" And God says, "I am that I am." Except that it's the tense. So the conjugation of the tense, as I understand it, is not present tense. So it's not "I am that I am." It's simultaneously past, present, future, and this is the name that God gives Moses for himself. So it's "I am that I am, I was that I was, and I will be that I will be." So basically, eternally I am. Eternally I am. That was the name that God gave to Moses. And that already, that kind of gives a bit of a vibe of Brahman from Hinduism, which, I'm not particularly well versed in Hinduism. I know quite little. But in Hinduism, Brahman is as I understand it, it's kind of the life force of existence that animates all things, including living beings. And so you could say it's God putting on the mask of humanity, or even, anything else. Does that make sense? And why that's relevant is there's kind of an interpretation of Christianity that Jesus is a man who became aware that God is beingness itself, and that Jesus also is beingness itself. The eternal I am. Jesus knew himself as that. And what can we say about that? Well, there's kind of an interpretation, I guess, that Jesus knew that it was all beings are that. But then that was kind of too far out of a message, so to speak. And people ended up kind of deifying Jesus exclusively, rather than taking Jesus as a sign of their own divinity also. And this gets kind of interesting as well, because within Christianity, it does actually take the Christian halfway there, I would say. So it's not just that it's deifying Jesus, because there's also a sense, if you read the New Testament, of being deified with or in Christ. So there's kind of a belief that takes it kind of halfway there, of I am with Christ, who is the unique God man. This is the Christian view of things, or the Christian view of things, that as I was brought up to believe. With the God man, Jesus, I also become a son of God. Yeah, but I'm not already a son of God, so to speak. Yeah. But then I think that if you take a non-dual reading of some of Jesus' teachings, you do come up with some pretty interesting stuff. I'm not saying that it's perfect, a perfect reading, but I do think it's a really interesting reading to consider. A few little points I can think of is, and there's really much more. I don't have a Bible in front of me, and I haven't been thinking about this recently or anything. Take up your cross and follow me. There's something there of the kind of renunciate path that you see in Buddhism. Also deny yourself, and to get to a real non-dual understanding of those statements does take a little bit of subtlety. I'm kind of glossing over them quite quickly. He also says, would you rather gain your soul and lose the world, or gain the world and lose your soul? And in John, there's loads of talks about love and how I and the Father are one. There's actually loads I could talk about. I could make a little video series on this if I wanted to. I could do. It'd be interesting, I guess. Yeah. Be interesting. And here's an interesting one. There's just fun for the mind, I will say, at least. He talks about, I and the Father are one, and the only way to get to the Father is through me. So that becomes kind of interesting, because from a non-dual sense, you can kind of look at it that Jesus, when he says through me, we usually would interpret that as through the person of Jesus. But there's kind of another interpretation to play around with of, could he be talking about actually his own, enlightened non-dual perspective that he might be going through, and through me could mean a few other things. It could mean through Jesus' state of consciousness, could mean something like that. Or through me, in a sense. It's hard to like put into words, but through me, he says through me, but when that applies to another person, it's through me, meaning them, but Jesus also considers them himself, so it makes sense for him to say through me. Treat your neighbor as yourself. That kind of makes sense through non-dual teachings, because in a non-dual kind of sense, your neighbor is yourself. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that that's enough for today. I think I could do a deeper dive. It would take a bit of preparation, I guess. But if there's anyone interested in that, if anyone watches this video and you'd be interested in some more videos around that topic, do let me know. This probably gives me a bit of fuel for some YouTube shorts maybe on the topic. I don't know. It's harder to be as nuanced, I think. So I'd have to think about that. But yeah, hope you're doing good. Sending you lots of love, and yeah, just hope everything is going well for you, and I hope to see you again, and yeah.